والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ask Huda. My name is Jamil Rashid. I'm your host. Today we have with us Sheikh Muhammad Salah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair for being with us.
Wa jazakum, it's my pleasure.
Okay, this episode is dedicated to all those questions that are unanswered, that we haven't answered. So please do not call us. We won't be able to entertain any of your calls today. So don't call us. I'm not going to give you the number today. I'll just give you the email address, which is askhuda04.tv. Okay, Sheikh, we've got a question here, which I really does need a lot of clarification. Somebody's asking, is Umrah wajib? Is it something mandatory as Hajj? And I think this needs a bit of clarification, Sheikh.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. All praise due to Allah, we praise Him and we seek His help. Whomsoever Allah guides is a truly guided one, and whomsoever Allah leaves astray, no one can show him guidance. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is His last messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated in the Quran, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ, and complete both al-Hajj wal-Umrah. So the best of the two scholarly opinions is that al-Umrah is as mandatory as al-Hajj, once per lifetime, because they were both included in the command of performing and completing both of them, في قوله تعالى, and complete both al-Hajj wal-Umrah to Allah. So accordingly, al-Umrah is mandatory once per lifetime, and what's beyond that is nafl, or voluntary.
SubhanAllah, Jazakallah khair. That's something which is, like we try to do in Ask Huda, we try to clarify these misconceptions, but really we've been told many a year that Umrah is just something which if we can do it, if we're able to, it's good, but not like
And that's why I mentioned it is the best and the most authentic of the two scholarly opinions, because there is another opinion which says it is just Sunnah Mu'akkada, but here we relied on a Quranic verse. This is number one. Number two is, we say to people who spent thousands of their savings, they've been saving throughout their entire life. They flew, they drove, they came by any mean of transportation, hundreds or thousands of miles, took long vacations to perform what? Just al-Hajj or about al-Umrah. And by the way, the actual performance of Umrah would not take more than 2 hours.
That's right.
Which is simply, before entering Mecca, you assume the intention of Ihram. You're coming for Hajj, okay, you assume the intention of Ihram from the Miqat. Before you pass the Miqat, you're ready, and once you are in line with the Miqat, you intend to do the Umrah first. Then once you enter Mecca, you do Tawaf and Sa'i. This is the Umrah. This is it. Then if you're going to do Hajj in the same season, and you do Tamattu', then you shave or shorten your hair. Undo your Ihram and wait until the 8th day of Mina, of the month of Dhul Hijjah, and make a new intention and a new Ihram for going for Hajj. Or you can merge and join both Al-Umrah wal-Hajj. But people who are the Meccans do Hajj, just Hajj, because it's accessible for them to do Umrah whenever.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Okay, I've got a question here from a sister, and I've got a question from the email as well, very similar to this, and it's regarding a sister who wants to make Umrah, has the intention, but her menses starts, so she wants to know what's the hukam. Now she hasn't performed any sa'i or any tawaf, and the sister,
she just went home.
She just went home, and the sister here, we have a sister who says, I went for Umrah, did the tawaf, and in the first lap, my menses started. I exited the masjid, I waited for my husband, we returned to our home country, and now I'm being told by somebody that I'm still in the state of Ihram, and once I'm clean, I should go back and finish my sa'i and get out of Ihram. So, some clarification on this, Sheikh.
Well, unfortunately, amongst the misconceptions regarding the performance of Hajj and Umrah in the mind of some women, that if a woman have the period while she is performing the manasik, that means Allah is angry with her, Allah is not accepting her rights of Hajj and Umrah, and now she just been expelled. So she decides not to do anything else, and she takes off from Ihram, and even some women return home without continuing and resuming the manasik, whether it's Umrah or Hajj. We say that An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us خُذُوا عَنِّي مَنَاسِكَكُمْ, or take the manasik, the Hajj rituals from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, since he showed and explained in details to his companions every bit of the step by step of the performance of Hajj and Umrah. Aisha al-Mu'mineen, may Allah be pleased with her, she had joined the Prophet ﷺ in the journey of Hajj. And when he noticed that she was crying before entering Mecca, he realized that she has started her period. He said, don't you cry, this is something which Allah have ordained on all women, all the daughters of Eve. So what to do? This is a question now. Do everything that the Hajj would do, except do not do tawaf. Because a tawaf requires tahara from the major and the minor impurities. So that's why you do everything. You would assume the ihram, you would go to Arafah, you would go to Mina, you would throw the stones, you would do everything except a tawaf. You postpone all of that until you're all cleaned up and the period is over, and you take a ghusl with the intention of lifting up the major impurity. Then now you may do tawaf and sa'i. If you will not clean up, if you're performing Hajj for instance, until it was already past the day of Arafah, guess what? Now the performance of tawaf and sa'i would be sufficient for both, for Umrah and Hajj. Even though you just did one tawaf and one sa'i. You have this exception and exemption because women during their menses would have different rulings. And she'd been postponing a tawaf. But for this woman who decided on her own to leave Mecca without completing the Umrah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. And He explained in the case of al-ihsar, which is being incapable, unable to complete the rites of Hajj and Umrah due to an emergency, a sickness, a calamity. There will be different rulings. But in this case, there is no calamity. This is very, very normal and typical for any woman. So assure every woman that was going for Hajj or Umrah, this is natural. This is normal. And if that happens, do not be upset. Don't you cry. That happened to the mother of the believers, Aisha. And after Hajj and before Tawaf al-Wada', Safiya, may Allah be pleased with her, had experienced her period as well. So deal with it naturally. You go with the flow, you do everything except a tawaf. Now this sister left the country, left Mecca without resuming her, finishing her Umrah. She's committed a big sin. And she's required to go back. No matter where she flew, where she left, she has to come back to remain in a state of ihram and perform tawaf, and perform sa'i, and shorten her hair, then undo the ihram. If she was not aware of this hukm, then there is no blame nor sin upon her. She would just go back and ask Allah for forgiveness and resume the manasik. But if the woman have committed, of course she's still in a state of ihram, even if she decided she's out of ihram and she left. So as long as you are in a state of ihram, among the restrictions of ihram is al-jima', having a husband and wife relationship. If this woman happened to have a relationship with her husband, now she owes a penalty. And the penalty, since this is a Umrah, is to slaughter a sheep or a goat. And to be slaughtered, or 1/7 of a cow, or 1/7 of a camel. And to be distributed among the poor of Mecca. This is the fidya. And she still have to come back and perform at-tawaf wa sa'i. Resume all the manasik. Then do at-tahallul by shortening the hair. And this Umrah is invalid if she did al-jima' or husband and wife intercourse. Because she's done that while she's still in a state of ihram, even if she left Mecca. So that means she owes another Umrah. Whenever she can, she would do the ihram from the same miqat which she did before, dismissed the Umrah, this void Umrah, and she would make up another Umrah as a ransom and an expiation for the Umrah which she invalidated.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, now you said something there that many of the sisters believe that Allah is angry with them when they get into their menses. From this we have a question regarding sisters who use contraception so they don't fall into the menses while they're going to Umrah and Hajj. Now, how do we go about this? What's the ruling for this? So somebody who's trying to avoid the menses.
I want to share with you something. Number one, whatever Allah decided is going to take place, whether you take contraceptives or not. As a matter of fact, many women who are not expecting the period to come before the day of Arafah, but as a mean of precaution, they take the contraceptives or the pills which was going to delay or postpone or stop the period. What happens is those medications sometimes have some adverse effects, and they cause the bleeding to flow earlier. So they are very, very confused, and they are not sure whether this is a period or not. So the complications and the adverse effects of the contraceptives or the pills which women take to postpone the period could cause even more harm. So if your physician advises you it's okay and it's safe to take it, then you may take it. But if it happens and you get the period, you're going to deal with it the same way we mentioned in the answer of the previous question. But as far as whether it's permissible or not, it's permissible as long as a physician advises you to use it and says there is no side effects to it or major side effects.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, you spoke about the sacrifice of fidya. We still have some explanation. What's the difference between fidya, hadi and udhiyah? What's the basic difference between them three?
These are three different terms. Al-udhiyah is confirmed sunnah according to the majority of the vast majority of the scholars. It is sunnah mu'akkada. Upon those who are wealthy, a family father or a person would give a sheep on behalf of himself and those whom he is in a charge for, his family members, those who are under his guardianship. Al-udhiyah will be slaughtered on the Eid al-Adha day, morning. Its meat will be distributed as follows. 1/3 he can keep for himself and his family, and another 1/3 he can distribute among his friends, and 1/3 which is the right of the poor. That can be slaughtered and distributed anywhere. Al-hajj is a wajib, not sunnah mu'akkada. It is mandatory upon every person who performs Umrah and Hajj in the Hajj months. Any person who've done Umrah in Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, or the first 8 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah, then follows that by performing Hajj in the same season, whether Hajj al-Tamattu or Hajj al-Qiran, he owes a Hajj. وَلَا تَحْلِقُوا رُؤُسَكُمْ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْهَدْيُ مَحِلَّ. Will be slaughtered on the day of An-Nahr, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, which is the Eid day. And it is one of the rites or the steps of getting ready to do at-tahallul. After throwing the stones, the next step in order, if one would just follow strictly the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is to throw the stones, then to slaughter the Hajj. So it is mandatory upon every person who is performing Hajj and Umrah. Can it be expiated? Yes. If a person cannot afford, cannot find al-Hajj, he may do otherwise. Fast 3 days during the Hajj days. Then when he goes home, he would fast another 7 days. So the total is 10 days. This is as a mean of, an expiation for not giving the Hajj, because the Hajj is mandatory upon the pilgrims who are performing Hajj and Umrah. Al-Hajj is going to be dealt with the same way like Al-Udhiyah. You eat from it, you give to friends, you distribute upon the poor. It will be slaughtered in Mecca or in Mina. Nowadays, the scholars have approved moving or taking the meat of the sacrifice to poor Muslim countries. Okay? The third one is al-fidya, which is also wajib as a mean of an expiation for a violation or a wajib that you missed of al-Hajj or al-Umrah, such as not making al-ihram from the appointed miqat. You can make this up by either going back to al-miqat or in a state slaughtering a sheep in Mecca and distributing its meat upon the poor. In the case of al-fidya, you're not allowed to eat anything from its meat. You're not allowed even to take from its soup, because this is a ransom. This is not a sacrifice as a Hajj. This is a ransom for a sin or a violation that you've made. So you give it all to the poor. And you cannot just slaughter it anyway. You decide when you go back home that some people who are poor, you just give them. No, you can't. Nor can you give in its state cash. But you may pay to any organization which is going to slaughter it on your behalf and distribute it in Mecca with the intention of fidya, as a ransom for a violation you've made, or a wajib that you skipped. Another thing such as skipping tawaf al-wada', spending the night in Muzdalifah, or not spending the night in Mina, or not throwing the stones, all of that would require the fidya, which is slaughtering a sheep to be slaughtered and distributed among the poor of Mecca.
Jazakallah. Now you spoke about hadi here, that if somebody can't afford this, they can do some fasting. What about the fidya? Can they fast if they can't afford the fidya?
Same thing if the person cannot afford, and seriously cannot afford, not just he can afford, but he's lazy, or because he made several violations and now he owes 2-3 fidyas, because each violation has its independent fidya. One would not be sufficient for all the violations. It's not a traffic violation. If he cannot afford it financially, then he may deal with it the same way as a second option for al-hajj, which is fasting 3 days in al-hajj and 7 days when you go home. If the person have made more than one violation and cannot afford the fidya, then each violation would require fasting for 10 days.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, now you spoke about hadi there, that it's compulsory on the people, especially those who perform the hajj. We've got a question related to somebody who says, I want to perform hajj. He said he's assumed the intention of umrah within the month of Ramadan. He didn't finish the sa'i or the tawaf until Yawm al-Eid, the day of Eid. Now he wants to say, can he perform hajj? Is this the umrah which is included within his hajj?
Well, I need to explain to the viewers what he meant with his question. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-Hajju ashhurum ma'lumat. That benefits us that Al-Hajj will be done in ashhur. Ashhur is a plural Arabic word, a plural of shahr, which is a month. So we're talking about months, which is Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, and the first 9 or 10 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah. Accordingly, if a person performs Umrah in any day in this time, even from the first day of Shawwal, and that's why he said the Eid day. The Eid day or Eid al-Fitr is the first day of Shawwal. Count as this is the Umrah of Umrah al-Tamattu or Umrah al-Qiran if he's going to perform Hajj in the same season. So he's asking whether this Umrah would be sufficient for him since he actually did a tawaf and a sa'i on the Eid day, which is the first day of the month of Shawwal. I say it all depends on when did he assume the intention of commencing in the act of Umrah. Was it in Ramadan? Then this Umrah has nothing to do with the months of Hajj. And if he wants to do Hajj al-Tamattu, he has to come up with a new Umrah during Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, or the first 8 days of the month of Dhul Hijjah.
So what do we call the commencing? Is it commencing the making the tawaf? Is that the commencing?
No, commencing is making the intention and the talbiyah. Because once a person assumes the intention, now he's officially in Umrah. Because he cannot take off ihram clothes until he finishes the manasik and do a tahallul by shortening or shaving his hair. So once the person committed himself to the actual performance of Umrah and Hajj, that begins when he assumes the intention at al-miqat. If just the person intends but did not change into the ihram clothes, nor did he utter at-talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma umrah, this is all just an intention, have nothing to do with the actual performance of the Umrah or the Hajj begins with at-talbiyah at al-miqat.
Okay, now we're touching upon the miqats there. I've got a question about somebody who says, I've advised somebody's passed the point of the miqat and they made ihram out of this point. When they were told this, they went back and they performed another umrah to say that, okay, look, I made a mistake, I'm going to perform another umrah. Is this valid for the mistake of making ihram outside of the miqat point?
Once again, this mistake has become a complicated mistake after it was just one. And this is due to not asking, not making your homework of studying. You see, I normally advise everybody that if you're going on a vacation, you purchase the tickets and you know exactly, you learn very important and valuable informations about the vacation place, and you make the reservations, and you know exactly, and you have in mind, you have an agenda, which part you're going to visit on which day and so on. Same thing, if you're going to perform Hajj and Umrah, I would like to remind the viewers with a very important fact. Hajjatul Islam or Umratul Islam is the very first Hajj. By the meaning, some people say, I'm taking this as an experience, but the actual Hajj is going to be next time. No. Hajjatul Islam is the first time you make it. Even if it is full of shortcomings and mistakes, and you paid several fidyas and you made istighfar, you cannot say, well, no, this Hajj, I paid it towards voluntary Hajj, but the actual Hajj of Hajjul Islam is going to be next year. I can afford it. It doesn't work this way. Hajjatul Islam, if you pray any prayer on its time, this is the proper prayer. Even if you make it up afterward, the first one is the fard, and the second one is nafl. So that's why spend some time and make serious effort to learn about the performance of Umrah and Hajj before you reach there. It's very sad that you meet people at Jeddah airport and they ask you, Sheikh, when can I make ihram? Where can I make ihram? You've already passed the miqat. Oh, do I have to go back? But I'm flying, I cannot go back. Then they are confronted with the fact that they have made a violation. And they either have to go back, which is impossible, to the miqat, or pay the fidya. Some people say, well, okay, this Umrah is cancelled and I'm going to make another Umrah. How? They go and perform the manasik, and afterward they go out to At-Tan'im and make a new intention of Umrah, and they say this Umrah is instead of the first one which is violated. It doesn't work this way. Once you committed yourself to perform Hajj or Umrah, you're on. There is no way back unless if it is against your will and out of your control due to an emergency. And that's called al-ihsar. That has different rulings. But now you already came to perform Umrah. Now you're going to assume the intention of ihram from wherever you are, since you passed the miqat, and that was your miqat. So you cannot make it from the next miqat. You make it from wherever you are, and you pay the fidya, and you continue to perform the manasik of the Umrah. If you want to make another Umrah, that's fine. But the fidya is due for the violation of making the ihram from the miqat of the first Umrah. So if you make 10 other Umrahs, that would not be a ransom or sufficient to cover the mistake of the first one.
Jazakallah khair. So this person now, he's gone back and done this Umrah. What's our advice to him? Is our advice
Still he has to pay the fidya. Now he performed tawaf, he performed sa'i of the first one, and he knows that he was in violation. So he thought that he can make it up by just making another Umrah. Okay, the second Umrah inshallah will be valid. But the first Umrah has a violation that you have to correct by the fidya.
So by the fidya. Okay, now we come to 2 points there. The first one is, I've got a note here. What if somebody comes to Jeddah, for example, and wants to make Umrah, but has decided that he's not going to go to Makkah direct, he's going to go to Medina, and then from Medina he's going to stop off and make his to the miqat and go to Makkah. Is this allowed? Or does he have to make it before he gets to Jeddah?
You see, generally speaking, that you make the decision. Why are you coming to Saudi Arabia? I'm coming to perform Hajj. From where? I'm going to pay a visit first to the city of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you're going to stay there for a few days, even for one day, and from there you're going to do the Umrah? Yes. So then your miqat is going to be the same miqat of the people of Al-Madinah. Any transit in the middle doesn't count. It depends on your point of taking off to perform Umrah. So you reach Jeddah, but you're not planning to enter Mecca. At that you don't have to put on the ihram clothes, nor do you have to make an intention of ihram. Because you're not going to Mecca. You're going to Medina. Some people have, or vast majority of people have to land at Jeddah airport. Then they change into another flight to Medina. They make their visit to the prophetic masjid, they stay for a day or so. And whenever they are ready to perform the Umrah or the Hajj, their miqat will be the same miqat, the appointed place of the people of Al-Madinah, which is Dhul Hulayfa, which is known today as Abiyar Ali. At that, if you're flying, once you pass by it, in line with it, or if you're driving, if you're in the bus, by any means, you stop there and you make the talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik Allahumma umrah if you're going for umrah, or labbaik Allahumma hajjan if you're going for hajj.
Okay, so the second point for me here was, what about somebody who violates these the ihram? What, out of ignorance, what's the penalty for this person who violates many conditions of them?
And the Prophet ﷺ says in a beautiful, merciful hadith, رُفِعَ عَنْ أُمَّتِي الْخَطَأ وَالنِّسْيَانِ وَمَا اسْتُكْرِهُ عَلَيْهِ. The members of my ummah, this is a statement of the most merciful man, mercy for mankind, ﷺ says that the members of my ummah would not be held accountable for khata, anything that they have done by mistake. He ordered a meal at any restaurant and you ordered beef. They served you pork. You ate, but you didn't know. It's not your fault. There is no blame nor sin upon you. One nisyan, if you do anything out of forgetfulness, I'm fasting today, but I drank. Out of forgetfulness, you're still fasting. Allah will not blame you for that. Versus a person who drinks deliberately, his fasting is void, is committing a major sin, if there was no reason. Okay? Al-khata' wa nisyan, and whatever they were forced to do it. If anybody was forced to do anything against his will, which is a violation, then there is no blame on them. Now, if any person, for instance, while in ihram, forgot and he wore a head cover for men, or before going to sleep, he changed into his pajamas because he thinks that al-ihram is only outside, but not in my room. Okay? Or by mistake, a man who's used to wear nice cologne and smell nice, he found that the sweat and the dust and so on, so he decided to take a shower and apply some cologne. He did that by mistake, unknowingly, or out of forgetfulness. What is the consequences? Right away, once you're reminded, once you remember, once somebody corrects you, you undo the thing which is mistake. You take off the head cover, you change into the ihram clothes, and you remove the cologne right away. And you ask Allah for forgiveness, and there is no fidya, no ransom on you, because you've done that not deliberately, out of forgetfulness or out of ignorance.
Jazakallah. Okay, now we had a question on menses. We've got another one here from the sister. Differences between the blood due to sickness and the one from the menses. How does that affect a person in ihram?
Well, this question is not only limited to the performance of Hajj and Umrah. This question is a very important question for all women, because it's related to all the acts of worship. There is a term called al-hayd, and there is another term called al-istihada. Al-hayd is a natural period or menstruation which happens for every adult, mature woman, since the puberty age until menopause. The second is al-istihada, which is an irregular bleeding due to some emotional sickness, emotional disturbance, some medication side effects of another medication, flying, anything which is irregular. I mean, if a woman has a period, then 5 days after the period, she experiences another bleeding, but there is a reason, a medication, disturbance, etc. And women know the difference between the blood of the period and the blood of the irregular bleeding. We deal with them completely different. The period blood prevents a woman from praying, from fasting, from entering the masjid, from performing tawaf, from having an intercourse with her husband, from touching the Quran. While the minister, while al-istihada, which is the irregular bleeding, does not do any of that. So how would a woman deal with al-istihada concerning the acts of worship? Al-istihada would be dealt with as any minor impurity, like urination and defecation. A woman would take a ghusl, perform wudu, and would perform the current salah, the fard and all the adjacent nawafil with the same wudu. But for the next fard, she's required to take another wudu and perform a salah wa nawafil. For each salah would require an independent wudu, the fard and its adjacent voluntary prayer and nawafil. Accordingly, if a woman is experiencing an irregular bleeding during al-hajj wal-umrah, that would not stop her from doing even a tawaf. Same like a salah. If she can pray with it, then she can perform a tawaf with it. How? Take a ghusl. And of course, women wear the pads and make wudu and perform a tawaf. That should not stop you from performing your tawaf, because it's not the period, it is al-istihada.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, we're going to go to a short break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My name is Sharif Tuni, and this is brought to you from Huda TV. In today's edition, we'll be discussing about the day and night.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equated the samawat with darkness, the firmament with darkness, and equated the earth with light. Why? Are there really pillars that cannot be seen?
Or is it an unseen pillar?
Everything is running, but the relationships are fixed. Yes. So that it would appear to people as if nothing is running, you see. We are destroying our environment with our own hands. And that's why the Quran says ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ask Huda. Just to remind you again, this is another special episode. No telephone calls, just email. So please do not telephone call. We won't be able to accept any of your calls. Okay, Sheikh, we've got a very interesting question from a brother here. He says, I want to perform Hajj this year, and he's worried about the sacrifice. He says, my sacrifice, is it sufficient from the family? If it's not, do I have to make one sacrifice per member of my family who's coming with me? They're dependent on me. So does that mean that I have to make it, or do they have to each make it separately? And then he gives some income details about his wife and his mother. And so he says basically, do I make the sacrifice, or do they have to make it themselves?
I remember when we held a comparison between al-udhiyah wal hajj, you said al-udhiyah, the person would offer it on behalf of himself and his dependents. But al-hajj is for each individual who is performing umrah and hajj. It's a mean of giving thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for each person, even minors, under the puberty age, wives, sisters, every person who's performing hajj with you, they owe a hajj.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, we've got a question. It's to do with the tawaf. When we finished the tawaf, we did a 2 sunan of the tawaf, which is behind Maqam Ibrahim. Somebody says, I forgot to do it. What do I do next?
Sunnatul tawaf is known as a sunnah. So it does not affect the validity of al-tawaf nor al-hajj. And when he said that behind Maqam Ibrahim, yes, it is stated in books, it is recommended, as the Prophet ﷺ said, to offer the 2 rak'ahs after al-tawaf, after each tawaf, behind the station of Ibrahim or Maqam Ibrahim. But during hajj, it's impossible to perform the 2 rak'ahs, to offer the 2 rak'ahs there, simply because of the crowd. And if any person would think about it, that means you're going to hurt yourself and interrupt others from performing tawaf. The whole floor is doing tawaf. And that's why you can just do the 2 rak'ahs anywhere in the masjid. It's not necessary to be done behind the station of Ibrahim. And if somebody forgot them completely, there is no blame on them, and that would not affect the validity of their umrah or hajj. It would just reduce from the reward of performing these 2 rak'ahs.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, we've got a question, and I think it's more of a clarification, so it's going to be longer than just a question. They're asking about why do the guards who are looking after the Haram, Makkah, why do they stop people going through Hijr Ismail? So now they want some explanation, what's the significance and what is Hijr Ismail? So I think maybe a longer answer to
I
that.
have heard that a lot. I have heard even more harsh remarks. Some people, why those Arab guys are stopping us from entering to Hijr Ismail and so on. Basically, they are serving you. They are doing you a favor, because you could ruin your entire Hajj unknowingly, simply because this Hajj, or this arch which you see in the 2 corners which are facing the black stone corner and the Rukn al-Yamani, which are known as Rukn al-Iraqi or Rukn al-Shami. One is pointing towards Iraq and one is in the direction of Asham, and sometimes they call them the 2 Rukns of Ashami. Have a story. Actually, the Kaaba was having a different construction. It was much bigger than that. At one time, when the Prophet ﷺ was approximately 35 years old, they've decided to rebuild the Kaaba because it was falling apart. But they've decided to build it from lawful earning. But they ran out of lawful earning, lawful money. So they decided to cut it short. So about 6 yards from the Kaaba was not built and was surrounded with an arch. Some people call it Hijr Ismail. It have nothing to do with Ismail, peace be upon him, at all. So it's called Al-Hijr. Al-Hijr. And about 6 yards of Al-Hijr from the wall of the Kaaba, 6 yards in front of it, this part is actually from the Kaaba. And one of the conditions of the tawaf is to perform tawaf around the Kaaba, not inside the Kaaba. If you're one of those honorable people and you happen to enter Al-Kaaba, you cannot do tawaf inside. A tawaf is only outside the Kaaba. So if you happen to compete and still force yourself to enter while you are still performing tawaf, you enter Al-Hijr from the left side, that means you've made tawaf from inside the Kaaba. And the tawaf, this round would not count, would be not complete, and the whole tawaf accordingly would not be complete and would be invalid. And that's why you do the following. You perform the 7 rounds around the Kaaba, beginning from the black stone corner, keep the Kaaba to your left hand side, and turn around, even including Al-Hijr, that arch. And after you're done with the tawaf, if you would like to pray inside the Kaaba, even though you're not one of those honorable people, you can actually come towards Ar-Rukn al-Yamani, and the corner that precedes Ar-Rukn al-Yamani, there is an entrance. You can enter from there. And this is where they allow people to enter according to the capacity of the space, where you get as close as you can to the Kaaba and offer the prayer. Your prayer will be considered as you've prayed inside the Kaaba.
So all of that space is seen as inside the Kaaba, or is it a specific area?
The hadith inform us about 6 yards from the wall of the Kaaba.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, I've got a question here by somebody regarding their son. He puts on ihram, he goes to make umrah and hajj, but due to an illness or he's tired, they remove the ihram. It's difficult for him. He's a minor, under the age of 10, 11, the age of puberty. Any penalty on him, Sheikh, or is he allowed to leave the state?
First of all, underage, that would be determined by the child himself, because sometimes a child at the age of 10 have reached the puberty age.
Okay.
And that means he will be treated as an adult. And this hajj will be hajjatul Islam or umratul Islam for him, so he's got to perform it properly, and any violation would have to be made up with the fidya, etc. But if the child is under the puberty age and is too young and gets sick, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, he will be included in the hadith رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثٍ مِنْهُمْ الصَّبِيُّ حَتَّى يَبْلُغ. So as-sabi, or the child until reaching the puberty age, as long as he did not reach the puberty age, would not be held accountable. So there is no violation upon him, and there is no blame upon him if he cannot perform and complete the rites of al-Umrah or al-Hajj.
Jazakallah. Okay, now I've got a question regarding the blessed water of Zamzam. We know it's blessed, we know there's many rewards in it, but they want to know any specific du'as when drinking from Zamzam, and some etiquettes regarding, because we see many things when you go to Umrah. Many people from different parts of the world do different things. Just some general roundup of etiquettes when drinking Zamzam, Sheikh.
Ma'u Zamzam, or Zamzam water, is a very, very blessed water. It is the most blessed water on earth. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a sound hadith, Zamzam lima shuriba lah. If we do not have but this hadith, it should be more than sufficient. The water of Zamzam is for whatever intention you drink it with. For cure, Allah would cure you. For richness, Allah would make you rich. To get a job, to get a wife, for a woman to conceive, for any reason. You just have to put your trust in Allah, drink it with sincerity, and believe in the promise of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Simply the etiquette of drinking from Zamzam water, like drinking any water, you face the Qibla if it is possible, and you drink thrice. And you say Bismillah, and once you're done you say Alhamdulillah. This is the best way. And precede that by having an intention and say, oh Allah, give me that, or take away this thing or this illness from me or cure me, etc. Abdullah ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, was a very smart companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who's known as Turjuman al-Quran. He used to pray a beautiful supplication upon drinking from Zamzam water. He said, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan wasi'a wa shifa'an min kulli da'in wa saqam. Which means, oh Allah, give me a very useful, spacious, precious knowledge. Ilman nafi'an wa rizqan wasi'an, and plenty of provision. وَشِفَاءً مِنْ كُلِّ دَاءٍ وَسَقَمٍ, and a cure from every illness and disease. Once you examine this supplication, you would find that it covers everything, worldly and for the hereafter. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, may Allah have mercy on him, also made a beautiful dua based on the understanding of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, before drinking from Zamzam water, he was heard saying, Ya Allah, I have heard that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in one hadith, "Zamzam lima shuriba lah, wa hada ashrabuhu li'atash yawm al-qiyamah." Oh Allah, I have heard your Rasul say such and such, and I'm drinking this Zamzam water to conquer my thirst on the Day of Judgment. So it would be best if you can combine between the needs of ad-dunya and the needs of the hereafter. What would be better dua than the supplication which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us to be recited in Hajj, and after performing Hajj, seeking from the virtues of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for both ad-dunya and al-akhirah, by saying, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So I advise that those who are supplicating not to limit their wishes to the store, the shop, the business, the wife, the kids. No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the richest, the most rich, Al-Ghani. He provides for everyone. And if everyone asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all what they need, that would not decrease from Allah's kingdom anything, but as if you put a needle in an ocean. How much water would it take? Nothing. So similarly, ask for both, for ad-dunya في الآخرة, by asking ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Okay, we've got a question related to Zamzam about taking it away. Now we see people take away Zamzam to their own countries and store it and use it. Is this allowed? Are we allowed to take away Zamzam, sometimes in great quantities, away from Mecca?
It was narrated that the mother of the believers and other companions would request from people who are going to perform Hajj or Umrah to bring some Zamzam water. So it is permissible to transfer Zamzam water to any country and give it to friends and relatives. And they drink it with the same intention, and it will be as valid and as effective as you drink it from there, insha'Allah Azza wa Jal. If you proceed drinking Zamzam water with whatever intention and wish, which is a valid wish, you have before drinking.
Jazakallah. Okay, we've got a question regarding reward of tawaf. Can it be given, like say for example somebody sacrifices and they give that sacrifice to their parents, can tawaf be given to your parents?
This is one of the things which cannot say it's by analogy to perform in Hajj or Umrah, because the Prophet ﷺ allowed us to perform Hajj or Umrah on behalf of dead people. And even if they've done their Hajj at the first time, Hajjatul Islam, we may do Hajj on their behalf. And when he was asked about making a fasting on behalf of people who died and they owed some fasting, whether Ramadan or a mandatory or a vow or a kafara, he allowed that. Similarly, Sa'd ibn Ubadah, may Allah be pleased with him, said to the Prophet ﷺ that, my mother died, may I give a charity on her behalf? He said yes, so he gave away a whole garden and gave the reward of that charity for his mother. So they think that by analogy everything is, no, we cannot pray for instance and give the reward to any person who is dead. This is one. The second is, yes, there are two different opinions of the scholars in that regard. But the best of the two scholarly opinions is to limit ourselves to what the Prophet ﷺ allowed. If I have something that is certain that the reward of that thing is going to reach that individual, I would make it because I love them. But if there is something that the scholars have differed concerning, I would rather do what's confirmed. I want to help my father. I want to benefit him after his death. The Prophet ﷺ says that the best thing that you can do is a dua. when the person dies, there are only three things which could benefit him after his death. One of them is if you have a good son or daughter who would pray for you after your death. So perform a tawaf, and while performing tawaf, pray for your father. Read Quran, and after you finish the recitation, pray for your father, for your mother, for any person whom you like. But you may do Umrah on their estate. You may do Hajj on their estate.
Jazakallah. And just maybe a point is that people sometimes don't take the seriousness of just following the Prophet ﷺ. They say, okay, is it in the Quran? We always get asked this question. You give us the Sunnah. Can you just quickly just show the importance of the statements of the Prophet ﷺ in relation to our deen? It's not just the Quran.
Whatever the Prophet ﷺ informed us with is complementary to the Quran. Is there anywhere in the Quran where we learn that offering Salatul Asr 4 rak'ahs versus Maghrib 3 rak'ahs?
No.
Versus Fajr 2? No. Is there anywhere in the Quran where is the mention of the rate of the zakah? No. The 2.5% on agricultural zakah, 5 or 10%? No. So the details of the ibadat were explained by the Sunnah. And the Quran said what it means, that we have revealed to you the dhikr, to explain to people what was revealed to them. So the dhikr here refers to the Sunnah, not to the Quran. The Sunnah has been revealed as well, like the Quran. وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. The Prophet ﷺ did not speak anything out of his own desire. If he was asked about anything which he has no knowledge of, he would pause until the wahy would come to him, then he would give the answer. So this is an issue which has been decided and agreed upon amongst all the Muslimin of the mainstream of the Ummah, that the Sunnah is as important as the Quran. And believe me, following the Sunnah and the traditions of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would just give you a peace of mind. The Prophet ﷺ says, دَعْ مَا يَرِيبُكَ إِلَى مَا لَا يَرِيبُكَ. Leave what puts you in doubt into that what keeps you certain and make you certain. For instance, this mas'ala which you just presented, whether to give the reward of the tawaf or not. Okay. If you love your parents so much, and if you love, the Prophet ﷺ was asked that, somebody asked him that, I was very dutiful and kind to my parents, but when they die, is there anything else I could do? He said, sure. Fulfill their promise, if they promise to do anything. Visit their friends. You may give charity on their behalf. Do dua for them, and so on. So these are the things which would definitely, guaranteed, would reach. Why would they leave something that's confirmed to something that's doubtful? So following the Sunnah would just give you a peace of mind.
So it's so clear, the clarification. Sunnah is not very dayiq in the sense, it's a very narrow to specific acts. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ did many things. Jazakallah khair for that, Shaykh. That was very, very nice. I've got a question from a sister here. It's from a brother, actually, about his wife. Very worried because they made hajj, but they didn't kiss the black stone. There's another case of the Sunnah, I believe. Is there hajj, has it decreased in anything in reward, Shaykh?
Define a tawaf. What's a tawaf? Is to make 7 rounds around the Kaaba, beginning from the black stone corner and ending up at the black stone corner, and it's got to be outside the Kaaba and counterclockwise, and while having tahara. Did I mention anything about kissing the black stone? No, because this is the required part. What about touching or kissing the black stone? It is a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ put his lips on the black stone and kissed it, and he received it by his hand, he touched by his hand. And he was crying there, and he said to Umar, هُنَا تُسْكَبُ الْعَبَرَاتِ. This is the time and the place where a person should shed tears and cry. Al-Hajar al-Aswad is a very precious stone that came from heaven. And Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, the Prophet ﷺ explained to us that we're not kissing the black stone for any reason other than compliance. And Umar ibn Khattab, when he came afterward, he came to kiss the black stone, he said that, by Allah, I know that you're just a stone. You do not benefit nor harm. Had I not seen the Messenger of Allah ﷺ kissing you, I wouldn't have kissed you. So we're doing this out of compliance. So did he give us the alternative just in case if one was not able to kiss or touch the black stone? Yes. Number 1 is to touch and kiss. But if you can't, at least touch, then you may kiss your hand. Okay? What if I can't even touch it or reach it by my hand? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said to Umar al-Khattab, not necessarily you cannot reach it because you're weak. No, if you're too strong, you're not recommended to compete with others and step on them. He said to Umar, Ya Umar, you're a strong man. If you find a gap, recede on. But if not, it will suffice you to point towards it with the right hand from far away. And this is one of the major differences between the black stone and the Rukn al-Yamani. So we've mentioned three things: kissing and touching, or just touching and kissing your hand, or pointing from far away. Versus the Al-Qarn al-Yamani, which is the corner that precedes, the adjacent corner to the black stone and precedes it. You touch it with your hand. What if you cannot reach it? You pass it by and you don't even point towards it.
Yeah, that's mashallah, it's very, very clear there, because we see some people who even fight to touch the Yemeni corner. We're running out of time, but
how good is it to try to fulfill a sunnah and a recommended act and violate a fard? It is mandatory upon us to be kind, to be modest, to be gentle to others, to be merciful, and not to hurt others. It's haram. So if you hurt somebody, if you have somebody pray against you, if you violate any of that, you've made a haram to try to do a sunnah. No, I would rather avoid the haram, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give me the reward even if I just point from far away.
Okay, now, just got one more question. I've got many here, but this is so important. What are the other things we can do around the Kaaba? What are the other types of ibadah, the sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ did, that we can do? Say, for example, we can't kiss the black stone. We're not going to be able to fight. We're not strong enough. What other parts of the Kaaba are important for us, Shaykh?
What is the construction of the Kaaba consist of? Rocks, bricks, have no benefit nor harm. Yes, it's a very precious building. It is a very ancient house was built for mankind. But are all those rocks like Al-Hajr al-Aswad? No. And that's why I feel very sorry when I see somebody trying to cling to every part of the Kaaba and to kiss and touch and hug and wipe their clothes and their ihram against it. It has no benefit. And it's against the traditions of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The only part which may be kissed is the black stone, and that's it. The only part which you recommended to cling your face and body against is Al-Multazim. Al-Multazim, this is the area that falls between the black stone corner and the door of the Kaaba. The Prophet ﷺ clinged his face, his chest and his hands against it. And he was crying there. This is the only place. Otherwise, because it's place, not because of the preciousness of the stones, that it provides any benefit. Keep in mind, Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, used to say that we used to imagine that we're seeing Allah while performing tawaf. As we could visualize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Kaaba is just a building. We are performing tawaf like all other living creatures, like even the electrons around the nucleus in the atom, like the cytoplasm around its nucleus, like the galaxies. Everything is complying with the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. So we're making tawaf for this reason, not because of the significance of the rocks and the stones of the Kaaba itself.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Very, very, very beautiful answers there. Okay, we've run out of time as usual. I would love to carry on, but we don't have any time. So until the next time, I'll leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.